Saigon and good morning, Vanakkam and Assalamu alaikum. And today we have Mr. Anura who has been very nice enough to accept my invitation to come up to my office and join with all of us. It's a very great opportunity for all of us and especially for me because he is my mentor and I have been working with him for as an apprentice for about 4 years. And for all that you know about Rathnavibushana, I don't think he needs any introduction. And basically he's a lot of knowledge and you can learn a lot from him. So I just was really interested in sharing it with my initial work for my office staff. And then I thought I'd rather invite the University of Mordo's first year students who will also gain an insight of his knowledge. So this brief discussion is all about learning our roots in terms of how we could use the indigenous knowledge of Sri Lankan architecture, art and architecture, and better make use of it for your future. So please take your best opportunity to maximum attention and then make use of this time and better your future in your whatever studies you hope to get on with. And I won't take a lot of time. And I invite all to join us. And we'll start off with the national anthem and we'll get on with the presentation. Thank you very much. one small request. Please switch off your mobile phone or keep it silent. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can hear me? You can hear me now also? Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Shah, and I'm extremely moved emotionally also in the way you are conducting things. I never expected the national anthem to be sung, and sadly I realize as version of it was played now. All the terrible things that are happening in this country now, where people are losing hope. If you focus on the beauty of the song, coming from North India, I believe, the tune and the words are very inspiring, and I must say how much I'm for having made us aware again with everything, drowning and sinking ship, that we are not sinking, because it says so many things about our country's assets. And maybe I digress just a moment, because many people are aware of a word called climate change and global warming and the catastrophe. Actually, I have been reading up on this instinctively for about 30 years now, and I am beginning to realize that maybe this crisis of the planet is bigger than our crisis, so that whatever we are trying to sort out here becomes somewhat irrelevant compared to the world crisis, planetary crisis, where it will become unlivable the way we are consuming. Industrialized man wants to rape the planet of all its resources as fast as possible. Even in Sri Lanka, we haven't still, all over the world, there are many scientists who have grasped this, who have tried to vocalize it, but it doesn't get through because our structure of industry and the big time corporates are unable to change. God help them, they may or may not change. So we have about 7 years to adjust. And I think on the good side, I'm 52 years old on this planet. So we have seen a lot of crises, a lot of things, a lot of wonderful things. We have a very good life. And the country is very beautiful all the way. I have a sneaky feeling, and you all will do this with this break of mine, that Sri Lanka may be being prepared by some force of nature or whatever you believe to learn to adjust to what's coming, because the West is not yet suffering the same way, because they have amassed sufficient backup money. We are starting almost from zero now, and it's a chance, but we have the resources. So try and get interested in the overall problem that is there while we are playing the fool here. And our resources, we are island, as you know, surrounded by a lot of ocean. And it's a correct size of island. You must see the writings of many Westerners, including a wonderful little book called Ceylon Through American Eyes. And that has some 70 essays. Each essay is almost embarrassing to read because it's full of praise for the country. We we have some of the most important minerals, graphite, which is so pure, it's some 99 point something pure. Graphite is needed for electric current flow fast. It's a very low resistance called graphene. All that is there. We have titanium, both in the drinkable shores and there. The Ganges has poured minerals into our ocean. So, these are unexploited, and your potential, I think your future can be good. And we also have had what we are coming to in our topic, our roots. As source, to me, one source at least, of inspiration to learn from and adjust to the climate change situation of sustainability. It's very simple. You can't go on digging the earth all over the planet for resources. You can't dig up lithium for batteries, you can't dig up huge quantities. Small quantities, the planet, apparently according to scientists who are very, very serious about this, the earth can adjust. That's how we came up with the Industrial Revolution. But with big machinery, with huge machinery, we can make holes 1 mile deep by 1.5 miles circumference, diameter. And there are in Bolivia to get us our level of batteries, car batteries, various things, solar panels. All this needs rare earth minerals. Those who are chemically minded or otherwise should learn what these minerals are. They are being dug somewhere else. Even renewable, I'm digressing deliberately, I hope it doesn't matter, you give me permission to do this, because then you realize that there is no free meal here. A planet will tolerate you, tolerate us, up to a point. Now she is destabilized. She is not going to destroy itself. She will change. We are the ones who perish. We will change to an unlivable, difficult planet, then go through that cycle, and again become livable, etc. But Sri Lanka has gone through all this from ancient history, and there are memories still through our oral histories. For instance, many modern people laugh at the Mahavansa. But if you talk to a scholar who deeply knows about Mahavansa, or you have a copy in English, or you can read how others have said how accurate it is. Every history has some flaws somewhere. If you look for flaws, you will find flaws. But the bulk of it is what it says. How Mangalisaya was built is explained in the Mahavansa in unbelievable detail. How copper was used. And go into this and get interested. Don't just because modern people say what is the scientific evidence. We could ask what is the scientific evidence you had a grandfather. And he's like, we don't need science to tell that. So science is important for certain things. Equally, oral histories vary in Asian parts of the world. This I would say it's a Western habit, trying to explain everything through a scientific method. There are super scientific methods of oral passing down. They are not so accurate, that's the only difference. So anyway, having said that, our roots have, my talk, this is not a lecture as such, I haven't prepared a lot, it gave me just 2 weeks and I'm somewhere else. I have no office. I'm not trying to make an excuse, but you must know that what I'm showing is only a random selection of pictures. There are other better pictures available. So my list of references, those books you go into, you find, you can use your own brain to sort out what is good and bad. Now, Sham also tells me that he has set up a workshop facility here. Where is it, by the way? Right. Where you can, in your spare time or time allocated, experiment with various methods of doing things. Now, This is not theory. This is using tools. Now, the gentleman who's here, this family line, know this very well. In fact, by accident, I consulted his brother at Rathnavibushana when I was going to buy some tool. I knew he's the only man who I could ask and get a clear answer. And he helped me immediately. How to open a certain nut which was not working. So this is traditional knowledge come down from father to son. Your grandfather was also in similar thing. So that's the point. You see? So it's very interesting. There are still people living whose memory has this. Seek them. Now, all your work as architects, interior designers in the future depend on a client. You will do it for yourself or your house, that's all. But to make a living out of it, you need clients. And in my book, I pointed out how wonderful good clients can be great sponsors. And there are lots of terrible clients who don't appreciate anything we do. You'll encounter both. Now, I'm going to just show a slide just to show you. Here at the bottom, I can't read this thing. Ananda Kumarasamy in one of his, Parker, in the book, Parker was an irrigation engineer of the British period. They have all written books. You know, I get drifting. I begin to drift when I talk because I see so much of fascinating stuff. Colonial period English writings by British people. Parker writes, the shape of Ramel Dagaba, please read it if you can, I'll read it aloud. The shape of Ramel Dagaba is thus explained in the Mahavansa. Duttakavin, that is Duttugamanu, inquired of his architect in what form he proposed to build it. What is your concept? Right? It is therefore clear that various shapes of Dagabas were even then known. The bricklayer, that's the architect or the chief craftsman of that period. There were no formal architects then. They were master acharya builders. The bricklayer filling a golden dish with water and taking some water in the palm of his hand, dashed it against the water in the dish. A great globule of, like a ball of crystal rose to the surface. And he said, we'll put something, you can see the bubbles forming. I will construct it in this form. The monarch, the king, delighted, bestowed on him a suit of clothes worth 1,000 gold coins, a pair of slippers, and 12,000 kahapanas. That's the coin, gold coins. It is refreshing, the author says. This is not Parker, this is a quotation from the Mahavansa. Parker refers to it. It is refreshing to read of a king who gave such desirable marks of appreciation of an architect's intelligence. He resembled in this respect some of the worthy Egyptian monarchs. He goes on to add, at the present day, even the slippers are not given to the successful architects in Ceylon. So don't be surprised with some time. Next slide. Now, these are in my book. A few memorable plants. This one. That is Sunetra Bandarnayaka. When I was asked by her sister Chandrika to design a museum for her late father. You all should visit this because it's little known in architectural survey. It's an enormous mural on the wall. And they gave me complete freedom. And only suggested, not designed, it suggested how to source things, where to source things, the material. And it's a very rare plant. So was Chandrika when she assigned me another museum in the same building. The whole building has 2 museums. Please visit them free of charge of 5 rupees or something. And there's an enormous mural there, drawn by hand. In the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 40s, even up to 1970, we didn't have digital printouts of famous actors and actresses, Darwin Fonseca, Swati Malaji, all those characters. They had to draw them on boards or hoardings, which are giant, 12 feet high, 14 feet high, so on, erected in Marathon and so on. These were drawn by young people. And the master teacher taught the younger fellows. And there is still 1 or 2 of them who only now do Vesak pandals. But I know one particular one who I used for that museum, Ranjit Senveratna. He's fairly young, he may be 60 or 55. He did a square foot, a huge mural, 12 feet high, by about 130 feet long. There are 2 such murals in that. It's almost like a photograph, and it will never fade. So, and then these skills are there for us to use, but they will die off. Their sons and all won't take to the same thing. And economic, very economic, human effort. Right? No electricity needed, sunlight, and you do. The next one is another, to me, this is not politics, I'm just talking about personality. This is Mr. Rathnavibushana. He asked me to be the designer of part of that Kotpalesaya. It never came out. I didn't proceed on that. The engineering people did it completed. I had nothing to do with it finally. But it took me one day. Now, I'm not saying they are kings, but they are equal to our rulers now at this stage. And he took me by helicopter with him and got me to have a meeting and explain what he wants. All this was, I can't now remember my memory. This may have been Giranda report even, where he asked me to participate in the planning of the things. No, I'm just saying they were people. The rulers of that time used to come to us. He used to come to our home or to our office or to be minister he was. So this is the humble. And in the Candian kingdom, the same thing has happened. The closest persons to the king, Rathasina, various Rathasinas, and that tradition was the chief craftsman or the Mulacharya. He would move with them. He treated them as close people, not the Disavas. And the Disavas are very jealous. And there's a story of Devendra Mulacharya. Devendra Mulacharya, he was the architect of Kirtisri Raj Singha as well as Sri Kumar Raj Singha, that era. And there's a story, you must read these books that I have given references. You won't stop. If you're fascinated by history, it's a first-hand account. How the Disavas, that is the political catchers of the king, was jealous of this man being so close to the king. King would listen to this guy. And they tried to get him out by telling a lie to another party. It's still going on the same way. Saying that Devendra Mulacharya had used some bad timber for a building he was building. And the king, the story was sent to him through another party that the king will cut off his finger as punishment. Devendra Mulacharya, the master craftsman from that clan in Anura, who was his chief architect, he heard about this second land, not from the king. And to clear his name, he decided the only way he went and committed suicide. He jumped into the candy lake and was drowned. So you can see people took their job seriously. The lessons are, they were dedicated to what they did. They had principles. They had principles. Now you can see, what's going on with us again. You have to know what's going on in this country. So they took that step, like Japanese do still. The others are not. That's a layman, that's a surgeon doctor for whom I did the last house I did in the office. No, one before the last house. Again, wonderful man. He only told me, I have 12 million rupees. That's all I can spend. It's about 10 million years ago. Give me a lovely house. I don't want ornamentation. I love Anura, all that. I like the atmosphere. But not, he didn't say do an old-fashioned building. He said do a modern building. He didn't need budget. And his wife and mother-in-law butted into the conversation and said, please, Mr. Rathnavibushana, do a beautiful building. So I did. And he delighted. That's a very interesting house. But many people will find it's without ornaments. Just space and complexity of space. So that's what I wanted to point out. There are similar guys also who gave me another. There is R.A. Singh house. Next. Now, I have to tell you something. Let's not be isolated from the world. Our history, earliest recorded history, comes from the oral history which became the Mahavansa. India has a longer oral history, but no details are there for the modern periods. So the Mahavansa helped India to unlock it also, India. Before all, and that is now, our histories are from roughly the birth of the Buddha, the advent of the Buddha, 550 or 80 before Christ. Right? That's 2,600 odd years ago. It starts our history. Vijay landed at the time the Buddha passed away, 580 BC. And that history, Vijay's landing, is recorded in India immediately at Ajanta and other documents. Now what I am trying to say is, there are histories of the world older than this. You all know about Egyptian. Egyptian is about 3,000 years before now. Right? And if you see the masks of Egypt, of Tutankhamun, the golden masks, the casting is flawless. Absolutely flawless. Look it up on your little handphones and you will find unbelievable that they could do that. So these technologies were there in the world elsewhere. And before that, surprise, is the other Greeks. Greek history goes into mythology of Greece. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. That is, some claim to be 5,000 years before Christ. 5,000 before Christ. It is long before, double the period behind, before Egypt. And the later Greek are the Parthenon and all. Now Greeks also had metal work. They had been casting. They knew all this metal. They could work in gold, silver, bronze and iron. So the earliest history referred to by Kumarasamy and other scholars of India is that a race of master craftsmen and wise people who knew trades. The 5 trades they call it. And the 5 trades they say are goldsmiths, iron workers, ironsmiths, metal ironwork, brass workers, then gold, blacksmiths, brass founders, carpenters, and stone cutters came from an Aryan race migration from beyond the Punjab, over the behind north of Himalayas. They may have come from Greek beginnings, or Greece may have had that. It is very controversial, but the fact is they have found evidence to show this. That is very, very old, the Aryan migration. And the Aryans were called Kammalas. Now we have the word Kammalkaryo in Sri Lanka. It's a Dravidian, South Indian word apparently, but then South India would have got all this coming from north, then trickled down over centuries, down to the south. So we can't say ours is only ours. Some of it may have got inducted. And the left is Egyptian. The top left, Egyptian sculptures. These, you see, these are later Greek sculptures of Apollo and Venus. This is Indian Chola, and that's also Chola sculptures, which is very close to our Cambrian period and Polonnaruwa period. Sorry, Polonnaruwa. That is Galvihara statues, and the reclining statue, you know, it's not here. This, I see some difference. Egyptians, gods were given a form expressing the godliness that they aspire. They are more than human. Gods were supposed to be more than human, so they did it like that. And exaggerated proportion, but very elegant. Egyptians had great elegance. This is Greek. These are close to humans. These are like Brad Pitt, all these people are similar. You know, the Greek concept was the human form as it is, natural. And in a way it's not, it's not so satisfying as that, or for me, this is godly. Completely different. Right? So the aspirations of the East were different from the Greek. But I then looked up earlier Greek, which is 5,000, some books say 1,600 years before Christ. Anyway, that's long before the period we are referring to now. There are statues which are a little bit like stylized, abstract forms. So this is a wonderful subject for scholars, but I'm only concentrating, I'm not a scholar by the way. My interest is always how to use this in our mind work, our work, modern work. But without knowing this, I don't know where I'm going. The Sri Lankan, this is Indian, South Indian influence, Chola. Very beautiful, but you can see the Hindu elaborate decorativeness. Hindu work is fairly decorative and sometimes heavy, but these are very actually extremely beautifully done. Now, Buddhism came to Sri Lanka in about 300 something before Christ, when Mahinda, son of Asoka, as you know, came and met Devananda Sri Lanka was converted. Till then we were worshipping Brahmin worship. And I would recommend you to read this deeply because you will get a clear academic insight by reading the scholars. The Brahmins also are two types. The Aryan Brahmins who came, who are called the Kammalas of unknown periods, they are not the same as the Brahmins worshipped in temples and so on now. The former were craftspeople, artisans. Now, Sri Lanka, after Buddhism came, you can see Buddhism is a dharma which goes down to the absolute bare minimalism in everything. living style and so on. And this extremely beautiful collection of three or four statues, you know them? If you look at it carefully, you have to be amazed. How can you cut or sculpt? There's one, no, three statues, no? How can you execute three statues without a mistake at any point? Unless you are having the attributes of the most ancient Acharya master craftsman. You can make some mistake. No erasers can be allowed. Once it's done, it's done. And it's extremely simple. No ornamentation. So we have got minimalism coming through the religious understanding of life. And okay, we'll go through this. These are all done. I have now jumped to the modern times. These are various types of bases, stone masons and so on, working under the direction of the today's architects who are lucky enough to not be able to do it themselves. I can't labor I think I should. The older teaching was that, not in Sri Lanka but long ago. And I was fascinated by these two things. When going to Kandy at Pilimatalava, I saw a foundry. The foundry blacksmith was melting, I inquired, he was melting brass and making brass objects. And I was doing a hotel in Kandy. So I asked him to make a tabletop out of brass. This is 3 feet diameter, thick brass with a tiny edge. And he did it perfectly. And you know his method, his tools. We are talking about tools. Today you have very expensive tools. And complicated, it needs electricity. Nothing. Human labor. Mainahama, they used to do it. There was one man doing this. Then, coconut shell as a fuel, burnt coconut. And I would like to ask him later if he knows, he had a tank, small tank, like 10 liter or 20 liter tank raised on a platform, and he had a pipe coming down, and it was atomized by this Mainahama air, I think, and it would fire, and the oil was waste oil. Now we are talking sustainability. We are talking sustainability. They used, yeah, I didn't have a deep interest to go into what oil it was. Maybe we will be enlightened during question time. And he was doing, and see the effort. Now to do this industrially, you won't be able to afford this tabletop. And we would have paid 600 rupees or 500 rupees to that poor man at that time. So there are these people in Pilimatala, there are villagers who are doing this. Still, there are Pittala workers who cast our brass hinges in different parts, particularly the Kandyan Kingdom, Pilimatala area, and in Paligoda, LP Perra and Sons, they used to make door handles and all. So now they have all stopped because the imported Tahadu ones are nicer looking, and but Sri Lanka has this. What I am saying is, even if we have no imports, all the brass will get recycled, aluminium will get recycled. So this is a new area people must look into before they forget this. And energy is human energy. There is in every town in Sri Lanka, there is a Kamalkarya, a blacksmith. I'm using similar words because it's familiar words to many. They make all the agricultural tools, the tractors, the manners, the udallers, and there are tools for different purposes. Mada udalla kila ekak tiyanawlu, goda udalla tawa ekak tiyawa, small work they make another smaller one. They are tool makers, And if you read anthropologists who study what is human, how different are humans from animals, what is it that marks us specifically? They would say tool making. Humans have the ability to make tools. Of course, crows also have, they have found they can make small things, small tools. Right? There are other animals who have little bit. But man has evolved, we can make tools for almost anything we want to do. And the correct use of tools is another aspect that Sham is going to help you to get encouraged. Next picture. I wanted to honor in my book the architect's work and always praise ourselves. I wanted to praise the hard-working bosses. These are two bosses I worked with in the on our project and in Panda. And I forget his name is there. Wilson, carpenter, mason. But there is the most wonderful master builder I have met in my life. This was Mr. Baba's favorite called Shahabdin. Shahabdin Bas looked like an Egyptian or Ethiopian man straight from history. And with a hoarse voice, tall, coat, sarong, and he built the Bentota Beach Hotel, the first one. And his site was perfectly kept. He knew at least 4 trades. He knew masonry very well, he knew carpentry very well, he knew steel work very well. Electricity, he knew where to put a conduit. So Mr. Baba, when he comes visiting, he says, sir, Mangita said a light box. So you can see they were master craftsmen. Who was asking, I never took a picture. I didn't anticipate doing the book one day. He reigned over all these people. And so, now he is a Muslim. Now, there were influences, the point I wish to make here is there were influences coming into Sri Lanka to trade. Yemen, we had connections with Yemen, it's Arab countries. So they brought not only their trading ability, but some of them were skilled craftsmen who could lay mosaics and so on. So we go to the next one. Today we have a different structure. We have specialists, architect or designer with engineers, quantity surveyors and different specialists. Right? In those earlier era, they were usually one master person who knew all. These are some of our favorite engineers. Sham has worked with some of them. So just to show, and we have in the evening, they are there to have a, enjoy our lives again. Next. Now, this is from Kumaraswamy's book, Medieval Sinhalese Art. This selection is not a complete set. It has been random picked. And some of the pictures are not necessarily the best of them. If you go to the book, if you are interested, get a copy and you can see it's wonderful example. Now, modern people, I don't care for these, but this is what they learn to draw these, right? Some of them are boring for modern young people and some modern old people like me. Next. These are simple tools, drills and saws and various forms. There are other tools which are missing in this talk, which you can pick up from some other lecture I have given. I have collected pictures of the tools used. The axe, the purva. How to cut a very large tree. I'm just telling you, there are people still in Kotte and our neighborhoods. One man is 69 years old. He cut a tree about 80 feet high, a mara tree. Only with an axe. He had 2 sizes of axes and some rope. When he came, I said, are you going to do this? He said, yes. With this, what about a chainsaw? He said, man, sir, Mama said, oh, nah. We had a jack tree. Before that, I told him to prune, reduce the height of our jack tree. We have a very old 90-year-old jack tree. I wanted it blocked. So I said, I want to slice it. Sir, he said, like that. So water can go down. He said, will you allow me? So I knew now he's climbing a tree, I shouldn't say anything more. You know, Sarah, he didn't wear modern long shorts and all sorts of other things. No wristwatches. He climbed economy, sustainability. He cut this in about 1 hour and sent to the work. And then he collected all the different cards and he left over debris. No, what I'm saying, he's still there. We have to cut, now he must be 73 or something. He said he can do it. I said, don't, I'm scared for you, I'm scared for myself. So you better bring a young fellow and teach him. So there are people, this country, we can, I don't know if our administrators can realize this history. There are still people you can form guilds or make use of them and give them bigger sheds to make. But not on large scale, on a smaller scale. We'll come to that also. Next. Now these are from Kumaraswamy's book. Now that's an elegant, simple version on the left. I suppose after the Europeans came, it will be made more simple. This is Candian, a bit elaborate, we do much here, but it's skill. And those also Candian period. Next. Now this has Dutch influence in some. Viral work is Portuguese influence. Europeans brought in their ideas. And they used our very good timber Sri Lanka had. Most of them are big. So there is European influence coming in. And next. Again, now that is that here, you can see a Roman and so on, Egyptian also some of them. But it can come down from generation to generation. That's a wrong area. Next. That's a string of a thing. But all not to our modern liking, definitely. I agree. But they enjoy whatever tools they used or implements for decorated. That was the style those days. Next. And now that bottommost thing, of course, I get indigestion if I see it on a table now. But they enjoyed it at that time and they're great antiques. Next. Now the top are some statuettes of Neela Mays and so on. Tilak Samarisam, who's an architect and a designer, he was inspired by those, I think. And he made very similar but very modern, simplified version of statuettes. And they were sold in the Museum of Modern Art. Oh, again, export market is available. Marketing is a weakness of many people. Next. Brass cast. The reason for pointing out this is to show you we have the technical ability in our workshops of those days, and still there are a few like this who can make very complicated shapes and forms. So extremely beautifully detailed. All we have to do is to make them modern in shedding the unnecessary decoration. Next, doorknobs. So silver work. Right? Next. Next. Many of your older families will remember in your homes, your grandfathers would have had these Candian knives and small swords or daggers. They are all cast here. But Indian craftsmen, they have come initially, mixed with the local master craftsmen who had come from earlier times, and this intermixture would have occurred. Next. Now that's a more plain thing. These are found in pentagons and all. Many techniques of doing this. Next. Next. I like that one very much because it's very simple. no decoration. It's a sense of humor also. Right? Next. I would this is just taken random without my participation actually. Next. Pottery. The color the one number 3 is it 3 years? Yeah. Left hand. That shape and that topmost shape, I think it is not a genius design whenever it happened. It fits the ukula, the woman who is carrying this, and it's comfortable to hold, and the water doesn't spill out easily. So there's a Saleh or something, right? So the design has evolved. I want to make a short quote which is referred to in the references. That is, Ananda Kumarasamy says something like this in one of his writings. It's not in a book, but it's in one of his writings. Introduction to the Art of Eastern Asia, published in 1933. Themes are repeated from generation to generation and passed from one country to another. So he's recognizing it's coming from other countries also. Originality was not considered a virtue. That originality was not at all important as a great thing to do, to be different. Do you call I being a different design? No such nonsense. No, plagiarism a crime. Plagiarism is copy. Was never considered a crime. Necessity of the being, or whatever you do, necessity, that is a function, was of the greatest importance. Right? The names of even the greatest artists are unknown. I'm paraphrasing Kumarasamy. Now think of that. When did we start this business of patents? It's an industrial base to introduce. Now everything is money making. I mean, some authors have said, if you go on patents, we won't be able to do another Dagaba because there will be a patent on this Dagaba. We are sharing the future of climate change. I sustain. I could be wrong. Is collective effort, not individuality so much. Not me, which is a very Western idea. But collectively working, we are extremely strong. So, working as a team, knowing how to ask team, and working how to ask. Japanese know this. Their motor cars are so reliable apparently, because the big boss of Toyota will walk into the workshops and get down to the man who is fixing the wheel nuts even. How can we cut down this cost a little more and do it better? That sort of thing. And that is a Japanese culture. See? So remember that we can learn from a lot of other people also. So my title always says our roots. Our roots include openness to influences and knowledge. Next. These are further examples of no interest ones. I told you this. Next is that these are walking sticks. That one, these are made recently by Nina De Silva Matale. Because made these workshops and guilds. When with each king of Sri Lanka, starting from Vijay. Vijay came here, briefly got involved with Kueni, a native woman, used her to capture power here, and then to become crowned as the king, King Vijaya, he imported a lady from India, southern India. And that was a tradition for a long time, even after Tipitisi Rajasingha. With that came the Indian culture that it matters to the speeds. That is how we get Koreans in Buddhist temples, and so on and so forth. Now, and each town, he distributed these craftsmen, these Acharya caste gurus, some to Kandy, some in Kampala, some in Mangalagama. This book has a recent history of Mangalagama craftsmen, right? Then to Gaul. Gaul was a very strong point where they established the craftspeople. There is this Kalvadu in Gaul. I remember when I was a child, my parents said, me and we were years. So they were stone workers. Then there is in the Ruhuna, all these places. Balangode had iron smelting. We have iron ore in Sri Lanka. And in Balangode and Sigiriya and a few other places, a European scholar, Jill Julev, she came in the 1980s, I think, to Sri Lanka, did an experiment to prove that you can do iron smelting from the Samanalava area has a lot of iron ore. And she made the parties like small terrace paddy fields and used the entire technique, wrote a paper to scholarly magazines and made the steel and sent it for testing, and they said that the steel is very, very high grade steel. They knew how to temper the steels. And they used only wind power. They used wind power, and it's fascinating, it's another subject. Jill Julev, look up Jill Julev, Jill Julev, iron smelting in Sri Lanka, ancient. Goes up to 1,500 years or so. They have done it. Now, not only that, this may have come with the earliest settlers who came, unknown originaries, and came here. Then you get told that there were only a few Kamakaryas, with that nobody smells iron now. And the iron ore is found, and the tree, fascinating details, the architects are interested in details. Samanalava area has a naturally growing tree called Yakada Maram. Yakada Maram කියන්නේ Yakada Maram. That wood is very high density. ඒකෙන් charcoal හදලා ළමයි මේක feed කරන්නේ. And so the wind from the monsoon comes up the hills and creates suction. Now, so Magale was another important point of the craftspeople. My ancestors tell me that some of them came from Magale, some they settled in Gaul and so on. Dina Disula Alvihara, she has set up a craftspeople place for poorer lot of that area, and these were made later. The middle one is an accidental picture inserted. Sharp says that that is an African one, but we have a straight one, we crooked. We have a dead straight, round ball knob. I have another walking stick, which is similar to this out of coconut. This is Sham's own family inheritance. There you are. Now this is inlay work, ivory, gold. So these crafts people, this Acharya clan, and they marry usually among themselves, and the trade going. And people worship their tools. You know that fellow who cut the trees, old-fashioned man, he would first worship that. That's all sorts of it. We don't worship the. So I suppose the wandering fellows still worship their chainsaws. You have to have respect. Your tools are expensive, and use the wrong tools. The mal iskurpune natuna, nikam iskurpune paaj. Iskurpune athivarai, anek divarai. It is a habit. You are not that. You are getting a chance to train. So you get trained by masters. Then you will never do that wrong thing. European students of architecture all learn proper use of tools and how to keep the tool at the end of the day. So that's the stress I wish to make. Next. This is from Nina de Silva castings, modern casting, 1980 or 70, late 70. Very crude, but Mr. Baba liked, he bought one which is without finishing with the lines, the cubes. It's in his house where the molten bronze flowed and it became like a sculpture by itself. Next. Now, left hand shows the Sri Lankan simplicity. Our genuine simplicity of our ancient culture. Not ancient culture, non-influenced by Hindu and South Indian thing. Dityo is agricultural thinking. Our people are agricultural thinking, mostly. They are simple people. They are simple life, they in agriculture very well. And Buddhism helps to keep it simple. So this is, for me, a perfect answer. But a modern designer might like to make some improvement, I don't know. So long as you don't. This is a modern improvement, which is to me a foolish thing. Because there are 2 aluminium rivets. One day you will eat, you swallow 1 or 2 rivets with your curry, kiriodi. So this is not a joke to me. I one day saw this somewhere and said, don't sell this as organ. Nonsense. And sometimes they use varnishes in food items which may be chemically bad. And that dish, can that be dressed in Sri Lanka? I think Richard Peary's had this. But you can do this. So just imagine doing that is aluminium, stainless steel and brass. You can have export market. They are very modern designs. Now coming to modern design. Next. This is, we finish with it. This is using natural products. Only within the last 4 months, 5 months, Sri Lanka started making these disposable plates using ericana, puak, kolapan. Right? And there was an exercise. I telephoned the guy. He said, I only want to encourage you. He gave his name, I passed it down to him. I said, what is your problem now? You have an export market. If you can do this, sir, we don't know how to market. We don't know how to market. So Keels are buying and selling this and making a bigger profit. This is another one. It's fantastic stuff now. And I hope they don't improve this with varnish or chemicals. He said no. He said he uses heat and a press. Now we will know how you can do this. Your craftsman will tell you. Now the government is not going into this yet. They want marketing. So some of you may decide, go around the country, buy a economical vehicle and collect this knowledge, help them to market, get hold of a business studies guy, set up your own schemes. So the danger is we always try to improve it with some modern chemical which a paint company will offer saying is much better. That is where we are really doing harm. Next, keels, you have 5,000 keels nowadays. These are the sunshades, but this is a palm leaf sunshade Buddhist monks have traditionally. Comes from the talipot palm, talgaha. And the talgaha leaf is about 8 feet, 9 feet diameter. And they know how to bleach it, how to treat it with sun, no chemical. Maybe, I don't know, they may be using some bleach now. They are bleaching it. And I made a lamp out of these, this current plant of mine. Next. That we'll see later. This is the traditional Buddhist monk's fan. This is a jaffna. Jaffna people take it. You see, it's one material. This fan has a weak point, details. The two nails or screws are very poor quality. The rest is very good quality. So you have to go to detail when you are designing. But the shape is beautiful. Now you find Buddhist monks on television with spray painted decorations of this. Complete opposite of the Buddha Dharma. Anyway, I'm sorry for saying this. Next. Then These are not my works. I must emphasize it very clearly. I am showing 3 or 4 examples of work by others. But there is much more stuff. If I had a prepared lecture, I would like to point out. So it's up to you. He's only giving you a little taste. Mr. Baba's design of a chair using steel and fabricated by the Bentota workshop, which is a Sutta, Italian, Taravella. The Tilaks or something, he has a simple. And the table is by Renford Caldera. Next. That is a classic, this is a colonial love seat, some call it, where 2 people can have a conversation in a situation where there are scenery or things to look at in both directions. So this particular one is a ebony version, and Mr. Bava is the one who popularized this with Bentota Beach. And seat is K, but I took out the cane and I have put a sheet of plywood. Next. This shows items which, when I had to do a jet wing Ayurveda pavilions, I wanted to have a lot of fountains and I wanted something to gargoyle, water to come out of something interesting and modern. I improvised from dishes that Paradise Road shop had. Sean Fernando is a genius at modern design. He has gone around the country, he has developed over the last 25 or 30 years various craftsmen, I think he keeps the name secret, and they have cast that. That's aluminium cast, this stainless steel dish with some of it, all done locally. But we can't do on an industrial scale because that is where you go wrong. Next. Those 2 chairs are by a man called Renford Caldera, and the table is also by him. This Samana the location is unimportant to my lecture. Okay. Next. Now this is an interesting chair. Folding chair. Manjula, මට හිතෙනවා මේ පුටුව හදන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ කම්පියුටර් පාවිච්චි කරලා. මේක මොලෙන්ම හිතන්න අමාරු මේ joints. I may be wrong, but I don't think it's easy to conceive of such a complex design. And it says underneath 90 kilos maximum. So because this joint that you have to, the details, the crossing, this piece, this pin. Now my ones are about 15 years old, 12 years old. I bought 5 of these and they are still there. This particular piece, plastic item, has a interesting shape. I think it must have been worked out through computer animation and so on. And then with help by man, making prototypes. I find this very clever as modern things. This is completely original. Now some of the chairs you have seen earlier were from modifications of old chairs. Mr. Baba's was not. I think that's original. I haven't seen something like that before. Next. That's to show where it is good. Next. This is jetting Ayurveda pavilions for the Siddhas and Suddhis to shower and to encourage them to take a shower without jumping in. We thought it makes a big katangari out of the taps where the water comes out, the showers. So I decided, again, the clients won't pay a lot of money. So I went to industrial people, like Silence Elcado. I met the Elcado owner and told him, and we drew this full size in the office on a plywood sheet. And we had to go, architects had to do some work. We did the full size, the details, what to do, and we workshop again, past and we worked for about 2 weeks with the boss and developed this at the industrial price. Price was a commercial level, not an artist price. Architect was not paid specially because of this. it was free on the house. So that is the tap. Actually, that's a commercial tap, industrial tap, and this is these are the two stylites and I'm telling. Basically, Ayurveda, it's an Ayurveda resort. We use the theme like medical people also have a similar theme, but a plant. I evolved the basic concept, and finally helped me to draw it up and contour it and details. You zoom on this later, you'll find we want a texture. It's like a Taharuanu. Stainless steel, can you make it blacker? Black is fruit does it. Stainless steel, glycerin or vanilla. Don't put black and how do you black and get it? Forks and spoons, spoon and black handles. Eating part is the same. This is I designed this for a hotel in the 1980s actually. And originally this is the plastic blow so that you don't hit the bulb accidentally. Then I found that's also too sharp on the eye. I used to throw some cloth on it. And then it has a lovely light. Then I discovered some people were making baskets for wedding cake or something. And I just took one and put it in. And this became my lamp regularly because there's a famous Danish designer, Karl Klint, Ulrich Lesner's uncle, stepfather, and he designed using this same style, the folded way. This is our own Kalipat palm leaf, and done by Mr. Ranasinghe, Sashikala Ranasinghe's father, and no electrical parts are exposed. I have worked, I go into detail. Every lamp has a earth point somewhere. It is metal. Next. No, this is the one which on a manufactured amber voice I just put it on. You cut the extra layer so that you get a very soft, beautiful light coming out of the top. Next. This is something which I created for that client that doctor. They gave me and this particular one is imported one I think from Thailand. It's made out of glass. The light is more out of this. The original teleport. Naturally, very this name have like Papadangvena due to sun, heat. So this doesn't last. And then even the weak points also. It has no into perfecting something. Next. This is an original as far as I know. My brother wanted, he is a workshop man, he is at Delhi, municipality. He did a house, he became a perfect guy. He said, you do a table for me. So, I had already done a cement table, a brickwork cement table in Morocco in 1971. So, I thought, we can't do the same, what can we do? He has a good metal worker. So suddenly from nowhere, these ideas come from nowhere, I think from the cosmic internet. I saw there was an answer. How you can draw the shape at the ground and draw the shape on the sheet above and connect opposite times, 1, 2, 3, 4. I told the boss verbally, clearly. And the boss understood. He is not educated by no university, nothing. And the wedding boss understood, what do you want? And he did it. And we have one improvement. After that, it's perfect. Now, and we cut it last up on it. But one more improvement is needed. That is to press hard. It has torsion. So it's connected in the middle. Now we need a little something. So we go on improving. And the table and the chairs, my brother, he improvised that. He got hold of the famous, this is Arnie Jacobson's plywood chair, molded plywood. Somebody was making in 1990s. Shell letter, he took the shell from that company and we made the base in galvanized. So it's completely non-corroding. And it's fine. Look at the geometry. The beautifully photographable is stable. We have to only improve that the X joint, crossing joint needs something to prevent torsion. Okay, next. So that's an original to some degree. So we can do sometimes original if you are really inspired, but you need a background. Sometimes you go wrong completely. So you modify an existing. Next, this is a table I did for that doctor. This is using local steel. This is a world famous chair by, you know who's? Anybody? No? I'm sure you know, but you are shy. Don't be shy now. Future Sri Lanka, you must speak up. Don't fear. If you make a mistake, don't fear. That's one thing I want to tell you. We all made mistakes. So speak up, otherwise you will remain the same place. Become an architect in architecture. We brought from Denmark, we brought the original, and Mr. Baba got his copy in 1971 by Penthouse. And there was another private last company has to be found. Their strength is the original has an cast aluminium base and a cast aluminium stem. Made of PO fiberglass. Baba is a serious man when it comes to. He won't fool around. He's a lawyer by training. He knows if a person falls, he will be sued. So he developed extra strength at this point. And he determined that his Penthouse, Neil Fernando, he is a technical man, Coleman may have strengthened. I don't want to go to details, but he did that. Next. Now, this is a color media water pot. I, for fun, took that idea and got it done in fiberglass by Penthouse. And then it did a wooden base, and Mr. Ramsingha, Sashikala's father, did this lab for me for a whole day. Then these chairs are of unclear origin, but if you do a search, you will find this Louis Paragon and a lady friend of his in Mexico, and evolved this basic shape. From where they got the basic shape, it could be another part of the history. But they did it with upholstery. Mr. Rambhava did this for, this was a prototype which one of my architect colleagues at the office gave me as a wedding present. That cave. Now I still have it. I got rid of the cave. Later I had an idea. Cave is a music. Put slats. Wooden slats. And then I discovered that it is more beautiful. This is the famous nursing chair, colonial chair. Right? This is the first house in Moratua, which is up there. Next. This collection I'll talk about in a moment. It's in my house in Moratua. Next. Yes. This came out of the blue as an idea for changing the material using the same contour as this. When I had to design something from the Rathnavibushana office, furniture for hotel, outdoor furniture, something told me, why not take this, get the fiberglass people to use boxboard, cardboard, work the contour, and make it out in fiberglass. It's hollow inside. And Mr. Baba liked it so much, he asked me for a pair of them, one negative, one positive, and black. Mostly black with white and white with black. And he has it in a connection. So you can see we are evolving. This is not a professional thing, but it's also original in the sense we changed completely the concept of material. And I have some of them still in my house. 80 to now, 40 odd years, no? They are still serviceable, still good. references, so easy here. Now, the Royal Art Business of Mangalagama by the same. There are two books actually. The second one, 126 one, is on the screen. There is another one which is about the chief architect of Kirti dynasty, great royal artificer of the 10th kingdom, Devendra Mulachar, the master craftsman. He knew all the major crafts, and he was consulted by the king whenever needed for any building. The Bhakti can be the audience hall, and the Devale, and many other buildings. And that I don't care much for it, but the Valapur Dharma in Candy is and the Candy Lake, he will design. There was even in the bed. And there are, you see, there are some of these names. Now I can't take to tiny. The names, according to Marasa, names of the Vijay name, Vijayendra, Vijay Vardhan, Vijay Narayan, Vijay Surendra. These names are very ancient. As ancient as they came from Vijay's town. When they go, they take all the specialists. Like taking a hospital specialist with you for safety. So then they give a little down and rewards us down. Mangalagam is one such villages, areas. They reward them all the time. The Gisavas never got those. Gisavas are jealous all the time. They are the traitors who gave the country over to the Britishers. Next, I want to say is that book, second book is also very important. These are out of print, but they should be print. Pictures are very poor. Somebody can, the pictures are not very clear. But it's very scholarly. This Whitesaker is a old-fashioned civil servant. He's the Indian Revenue Commissioner was there. And Whitesaker has gone enormous depth to this subject. So, later names are some names, many other names come up. Mahindra's crowd, certainly. Then Sangamitra and she would have brought teacher. So Indian influx, but the Indians had to dance to the tune of the king here. And many, fortunately, many of our kings, because of maybe the police influence or the priests influence, most of the religious are. They were simply interested in simplicity. Not like the temples now, some temples, not all. Some temples have become so elaborate. But the famous, when you go in a village, the serenity of simple whitewashed temples has a huge impact on you. They don't impose. It's like the statues, Gallian statues. The Roman Catholic priest, Merton, Reverend Merton, is quoted in that book of American, I said, Ceylon through Americanized, he says this Reverend came to Sri Lanka to convert people. He came during early British times. And Merton had gone with another reverend, locally based priest, to see Polonnaruwa. And when he saw this, he says he was transfixed at the simplicity. He describes it in very good English. He's giving nothing, taking nothing. He's complete neutral. He describes it in the book. And he says he was transfixed. And the other guy, the local based Reverend asked, what are you looking at so much? Let's go, there are other interesting things to see. Is it heathen? The stone worshippers. So he ridiculed this man, praised him. So he was so open-minded. So there is a difference somehow. See here, for instance, Kasyapa, mostly attributed. It was started by Dhatusena according to some little research I also did with my staff. Dhatusena started CBA in our referencing various other books. And he went down to Woodlands like his brother's time also.
there were so many things that happened there. But degree of frescoes, some they are like Ajanta, not at all. They are similar in some ways, but Ajanta are serious drawings. These are fun drawings. If you look carefully at the faces, at the jewelry, at the gestures of the frescoes, they are done in a sense of fun. And the lines are light. Everything is light-hearted. Our dark snoopers are very light, not like in Cambodia and Thailand and so on. Highly elaborate. So there is a simplicity in the Buddhism that came here was Pali-based Buddhism. That's the word of the Buddha, of simplicity. Sanskrit-based Buddhism is Mayan, which has spread in many countries, including Japan and has come to Sri Lanka. Now we are doing better than Mahayana in some temples. They are going overboard with decoration. That's the way people are. I'm just saying, we must know the truth. And simplicity came from Torina. And those things, they have modified the way the craftsmen were trying to do. There's another very interesting thing about the Buddha image. Or the Martin Wittgenstein says, the Sri Lankan Buddha images. All the Sri Lankan Buddha images are, sometimes they have been originally Indian craftsmen, South Indian craftsmen. They have the legs, not twisted. It's called the Rathnavibushana. Not the complicated yoga pose. It's relaxed, one below the other, all the statues. And the only author who has pointed this out, my reading is Martin Wittgenstein. He has many pictures showing this. He says this shows a relaxed, easygoing attitude of the Sinhalese of Buddhism. That seems to be an interesting thing. That they are not contorted, distorted trends in any way. So there's a lot, there's a lot of this history. We have to go forward, no doubt. We can't be doing decorative work that show. We have to learn how to make modern shapes, modern useful shapes, not one for the own sake. Surely you won't design a pair of shoes which you can't wear, no? But what are modern designers mostly showing in fashionable schools of designing, fashion design schools in Colombo? All sorts of things which are different and exciting to look at. But can you wear many of them? And Barbara Sansoni is a great advocate about the lady. She loves the traditions of Sri Lanka. She created fabrics, as you all know, which are modern lines, outlines. Her colors are inspired from Sri Lanka's traditions, but completely different. Ina de Silva, being a Candian Matale person, she kept the decorativeness still going. So, we can modify. Interior design you'll find in my book. I had to do the Candy Citadel redecorating. I didn't design the building, the dining hall and the which have heavy concrete beam structure. So we decided to have, inspired from Indian colors in the festival of Terahara now, brilliant colors lit from behind. Batik when lighted from behind becomes jewel light. Then the beach was seen flat and you could just appreciate it. But if you light batik from behind, it is jewel light. So we designed a new theme, modern lines, with a practical way of healing it from insects. So it took effort. It's all in my book. So this is all. I don't know whether about tools, I would leave it to some expert to talk. One last thing, the importance of apprenticeship was emphasized under a guru in the medieval times. Training the hand, eye and mind and learning to draw was very important. Training the hand. Then proper use of tools and proper method for it. You can't take to open a painting, the boss will use your best screwdriver
Or he use a near worse than that to open the tin. So we must learn that. Then we humble to learn. Thank you. That's all I can think of.